So we have learned about the try block as well as catch block. So the block of statements which may probably raise an exception is enclosed in the try block, and followed by immediately try, you will be having a catch block. So what is the purpose of the catch block? The usual handling of the exception is written in the catch block. So try block cannot be alone. So immediately after the try block, you need to place your catch block. Right now, what is the last one is the finally block. So this finally is an optional statement and it is a block. So usually you can encode any sort of closing statements in the finally block, as it is definitely executed with irrespective of whether an exception is generated or not. We'll say an example for that. I'll be dealing with the same program again. This was the last program which we have seen for try as well as catch block. Now what I do is I'll comment your catch block, both the catch blocks. I'm going to comment this catch block, right? So now you can see an error that your try block, it is clearly showing that what is happening here is you are having a try block, but you have commented your catch blocks. So now you can see an error, that syntax error, insert finally to complete the try statement, right? That means I can just simply include a finally block to remove this error. Now you can see it is always an optional. What your compiler wants is it wants some finally code to be there here, or you can have your catch block or finally block. So now what you can do, I can write a statement like system.out.print in finally, just a normal closing statement you can write. So see here, try is a block where an exception is raised and a catch usually handles the error. Now you can have one finally block also in the exception handling. So what is your finally block is executed irrespective of whether an exception is thrown or not here. So this is, so usually what you can place in the finally block is some sort of closing statements can be usually part of finally block. So try, if you don't write a catch statement, you can instead write your finally block also. Now if at all, the second step, I am removing your catch comments of your catch block. Now you can see again there is no error. So now again the same thing, z is equal to x by y, if at all a divide by 0 error is there, it comes and falls into the exception E, this catch block. If there is an array index out of bounds exception, it falls into the array index, the array index out of bounds catch block. Irrespective of that, your finally is also executed. So finally is an optional one, optional block of the code. Irrespective of whether an exception is raised or not, you our exception is generated or not, your finally block of code is always executed, right? So now just we'll run the program once again. You can see I'll not raise initially your exception. So this exception I didn't give divide by 0, so it comes here and your array index out of bounds exception is raised, so that is handled. Java.lang.array index out of bounds, I handled, we have written the specific exception itself here. So after that you're finally in finally, right? You got the output as in finally. You can associate ln if you want it to print in the next line also, and next here also you can give ln program terminated. Now you can see, just I'll run once again. Right, 4 2, right? The value of z is 2. Now at this point of time your array index out of bounds exception has been raised, so that is caught here in the catch block, it is handled properly. And after that this has no, this is bypassed, and after that finally is a block of code which is always executed, right? So in finally, and after that you are having one more statement called program terminated. So this is the use of your finally. You can write a try block and associate your finally as well. As we have seen in the previous run, I have commented this two catch blocks. Now try with finally also will work for sure. So this is your finally. Right. So we have seen try, catch as well as finally, which are the blocks, and the next comes throw as well as throws. So just we will have a brief look about the exception handling syntax. exception syntax. So this is what exactly we have done in the program as well. Try code which might throw an exception. You are having catch exception class. What we have done here earlier, what we have done in our program example, what we have written array out of bounds exception, arithmetic exception, or it can be just an exception also. But it clearly tells that one try block you are having your catch, you are having another catch, and next you are having finally. So what is finally? Always executed whether an exception was thrown or not. So try alone with finally is also okay. So this is one example. In this example, you are having data equal to 50 by 0 instead, like we have taken z is equal to x by y, and this is also the same one. So 50 by 0, and you are printing rest of the code. So what will be the output of this program? Will be the output of this program. You are raising a divide by 0 error. Are you handling any exception part? No. So what will happen? Your Java JVM will raise its own default handler. It is raised, but as a programmer in the program you are not creating any exception handling mechanism here. By default, whatever is it, you are going to get as an output. So exception in thread main java.lang.arithmetic exception divided by 0 is printed. This is not new to you. In the previous example programs we have seen the same thing. But what will happen, this statement will be executed or not? It won't be executed because at this point an exception is raised. JVM handles the exception and the rest part of the program will not be executed. Right. So we'll just brief about this. JVM first check whether the exception is handled or not. If the programmer is handling the exception, then that will be always be given preference, right? Default comes into the picture when you are not including the exception handling mechanism in the program. So this is the reason JVM first checks whether the exception is handled or not. If the exception is not handled, then JVM provides the default exception handler that performs two tasks. What was the task? It gives the exception description. As I have shown, the first one, exception, you'll be getting the information about exception. And the second one, the stack trace. What is the stack trace? You are getting the line number, the class name, the method name, and the package name in that in the second line. So that is your stack trace, and it causes the program to terminate. The next block of the statements were not executed when your default handler comes into the picture. Right, this is what exactly we have seen, but it is in the different format. So the earlier int data is equal to 50 by 0, it throws an exception. So you are catching the arithmetic exception. You know specifically that it raises an arithmetic exception. So better you can give the exception class name as arithmetic exception. Now you are printing a. Now rest part of the code is as usual executed. Because this is when you are placing your try and catch blocks, then definitely it is your programmer is handling the exceptions here. Now multiple catch block, we have seen this also. You can have a single try block. A single try block can alone raise many exceptions also. Like in the example we have seen arithmetic exception which is divided by 0, and the other exception was array index out of bounds exception. So a single try block, and you can have multiple catch blocks. So multiple catch blocks. This is the syntax we have seen in the program also. Now the next one is try statements, nested try statements. So a try statement can be inside the block of another try. Nested try. Try inside another try is your nested try statements. Now we will see the program. Right. Now see here. We'll take the same program now. Now consider that try z is equal to x by y. I have written and I have printed your x, z. Now what I'll do is I'll embed one more try. This is nested try. So what I am writing? I'm declaring an array a equal to new int of 5, and I am raising, purposefully I am raising the exception here. That is array index out of bounds exception. And here you are having, if you consider the inner try, this is my try block. I have closed here. Now this is the associated catch block with this. Now where I need to close? A try inside another try. Now you didn't close this particular try, the outer try. So now here after this try, this is the opening of the try block in nested inside try block and the inner try block, and this is the closing of inner try block. Associated with this, immediately you are having a catch block. Now here you need to close the outer try block. I'm closing the outer try block here. Now followed by you are having the catch, right? Followed by you are having your finally. So this sort of the program is nested try. I'm having a try block where I just, what we have done, we have embedded, we have enclosed this array index out of bounds exception inside another try block. There is a possibility. I can have multiple statements in a try block. You can create a nested try as well. So try z is equal to x by y. This try outer try block is will raise divide by 0 if my y is equal to 0. Inner try block is raising array index out of bounds exception. So associated with this inner try, open the inner try, closed the inner try, and associated with this immediately you are having a catch block. So now this is still left out. This outer try is not yet closed. So you are closing your outer try here, and followed by again you are having a catch exception, and you are having the finally block. So this is your nested try. So we'll just have a look at the execution of the program. Right, enter the value of x. So what will happen now? 4. If I am giving the value of your 0, right, it directly comes to where does your control transfer to? Z is equal to x by y is itself an error. So as I said you in the previous examples, once this error is raised, it will directly come to the catch block and further block of the code is executed. But the code under this, once it is raised, the code under this is not executed. Remember this. So z is equal to x by y. This is itself raising an exception. So directly where does your control transfer to? The outer catch. This try and this catch is your inner try. So this is the closing of the outer try. So directly it comes to the exception E, and it is printing your system.out.println E. That is the description about your E. And finally, as I said you, irrespective of whatever, your finally block is always executed. So you will be printing in finally, and again after this you are having one more statement called program terminated. So the program will be terminated. So this is your nested try. Right. Right, this is the nested try. This is the example. Try statement 1, statement 2. Again try, you are having some set of statements. You are having the catch block associated with this inner try, and this is the catch block associated with your outer try. So we are having the example. We have seen the example. No need to again check this. And this is the description about the finally block. Say, remember some points about the finally block. Finally block is a block that is always executed. So some important tasks such as closing the connections, closing the stream, some cleanup activities can be always a part of the finally block. So finally creates a block of code that will be executed after a try and catch block has completed. We have seen that example also, right? So just go through this one. Finally block will be executed whether or not an exception is thrown. Each try clause requires at least one catch or finally. This is what the example is. One try can have, your try cannot be left alone. Your try can have at least one catch or one finally. If catch is not written, no problem. You can write it as in your finally also. So before terminating the program, JVM executes the finally block. If any, if you are writing, till now we never wrote the finally block. If at all you are writing any finally block, JVM executes the finally block before terminating the program. So finally must always be followed by try or catch block. You can't just write your finally block like that. It must always be followed with your try and catch block. So here we can see this is the program code. Exception occurred or not is a question mark. It is a condition whether exception occurred or not. If exception is not occurred, then it goes, and if finally is there, finally block is executed. If exception occurred in the program, if an exception is raised in the program, yes, then whether your exception is handled or not, that is whether your catch block is written or not. Irrespective of that, whether the exception is handled, that is whether your catch block is there, whether you have written the catch block or not. If it is written also, yes, it goes and it comes and it executes your finally block. If the exception is not handled also, it comes and it executes the finally block. So you can see in this example that whatever you do, whether irrespective of whether an exception is raised or not, your finally block is always executed, right? So this is a simple example of that. Right. Next we will be seeing the throw keyword. So throw keyword is used to explicitly throw an exception or custom the exception, right? See, throw is not limited to only user defined exceptions. You can use a throw keyword when you want to throw an exception. Explicitly, I want to throw an exception. What do you mean by that is, see, implicitly and explicit. What do you mean by implicit exception and explicit exception? Right. Now, for example, when I am writing z is equal to x by y, z is equal to x by y, divide by 0. Divide by 0 is an exception which is automatically detected by the JVM, right? I am not telling explicitly that this is the exception. When you are executing the program, And when the control reaches to z is equal to x by y, it is clearly known to the system that this is a divide by 0, so it is an exception. And it is raising its exception. You are not raising it explicitly. This is an implicit exception. Similarly, when I am trying to use a of 6, which is an array index out of bounds, this is also automatically determined by the system. This is also an implicit exception, that implicitly raised exception, that you are not raising this exception. So now what is your throw doing? Throw is a keyword, right? Throw is a keyword used to explicitly throw an exception or custom exception. What do you mean by this is, irrespective of whether it is in a built-in exception or whether you are defining an exception, when you use the throw keyword, you can explicitly throw an exception. See, for custom exception, it is mandatory that you need to throw. Why? What is custom exception? User is defining. I am a programmer and I can define my own exception. See, for example, leave about divide by 0 or array index out of bounds and all. For example, consider that I'll be giving some value called as x. And I'll explicitly tell that this x will be in so and so range. Now, there is no built-in exception as such to support that one. So, what user can do or the programmer can do, I can write my own exception for that. What is an exception? I'll just mention it as some range exception or something like that, which is my own exception. I can give any name of that for that exception, and I can create my own exception. So when you are creating your own exception, how does your system know that this is the point where I need to throw the exception? How you need to do? You need to explicitly tell that where I need to throw that particular exception also. I'm repeating, throw keyword is used irrespective of whether it is user defined exceptions or built-in exceptions. But wherever a point where you want to throw an exception explicitly, you'll be using the throw keyword. Why I am specifically telling about custom exception is custom exceptions are user defined exceptions. When the user is defining the exception, then it is your responsibility to throw the exception as well. See, what do you mean by that is, when an arithmetic exception is raised, like divide by 0, your system understands that it is an implicit exception. So that is a point where an exception is raised and you are only handling that one. If you are not handling, your Java is already supporting that. It is having a default handler also. So now when I am talking about user defined exception, when you are defining the exception, how will your system know that which point I need to raise the exception? So that is the reason you need to explicitly throw an exception. You need to tell that this is the exception and this is the point where I am throwing the exception. So explicitly thrown exception. So this throw is not, as I said, I'm repeating, throw is not limited to user defined exceptions alone. I can just like that throw new arithmetic exception also. Even though it is your built-in exception, I can just tell that throw new arithmetic exception as well. Right. So we'll be seeing the example of your throw. Then I'll tell you in detail. Okay. What will I do is, I'll just comment this. It is a confusion. Okay. I'm having one variable called x in this program, and I'm defining my scanner object as well. Now I want to make sure that my x is in range. Consider your x is a marks. Okay, I'll be writing it as marks. Right? Now I'll be reading the value of your marks. How I'll be reading? Using my scanner object. Marks is equal to s dot next. Okay, irrespective of whether it is float or integer, we are only concentrating on dealing with the user defined exceptions. So I'll be taking it as integer, though it can be a floating point value also. I'm dealing with an integer here. So marks is equal to s dot next int. So I'll be reading the value of your marks. Now I am giving one condition to raise the exception. Like if my marks is less than 0 or marks greater than 100, I want to raise an exception, because this is like I am defining the exception. There is no as such any exception like if the marks is less than 0 or marks greater than 100, you want to raise an exception. It is not like divide by 0, right? It is not implicitly caused. So this particular exception I want to define. So what I am doing, if marks is less than 0 or marks greater than 100, marks less than 0 or marks greater than 100. Now I'll write throw. Throw is the keyword. New. It is my own exception. So I'll be writing. I'll be writing something like marks valid exception. And I'll write this is for marks not in the range. Right. So you can see that there is an error because it is undefined. Marks valid exception, this is user defined. So how will your system know that it is, see if at all in place of this I write arithmetic exception, your system will clearly know that it is an arithmetic exception. But now I am writing something like marks valid exception, it is my own exception. So you need to make your system understand that obviously it will throw an error. Now when you click on this, you are having some options like whether you want to create a class for this. Yes, click on this. Right, it will be asking you for the normal, like the way how you are creating your files. So it is opened. What was the example we have taken? Marks valid exception. Now what did I give in the message? Marks not in the range. Now when I clicked your error message, it has supported me saying that you want, whether you want to create a class. Yes, this is a class I created, and it should mandatorily extend exception. It should mandatorily extend exception. Why? This is an exception, like arithmetic exception or your array index out of bounds exception, illegal argument exception and all. In the similar way, I am creating my own exception. So obviously it should extend the exception, right? Now if you want, what we will be doing is I'll be creating a string MSG. We will have some specific purpose for that string MSG, and I'll take the constructor. I'll be writing a constructor, right? I will write string message 1. So no need of any confusion. If you want to write it as same MSG instance variable and your parameter is same, then you can use this dot message also. Okay, we will do the same thing. This message. Now I am writing this dot MSG. What is this dot MSG? This MSG, the instance variable, is equal to the parameter MSG, right? Now we will be defining one function, public void to string. Yeah, 1 second. Right. That was another exception created. Right, now you can see what I have done. Okay, what was our example? This one. Right, now you can see there is no error. See, I'll again explain. I have taken one variable called as your marks. It is an integer, no problem if it is an integer also. I've taken the variable called marks. Marks, I'm reading the value of your marks. Now I'm raising an exception. Like I want to create an exception. Like if the marks value is less, I can't give the marks less than 0. The minimum marks which I give is 0, and the maximum marks I can't give above 100. So now if at all you are entering the marks less than 0 or greater than 100, I want to create my own exception. So what is the exception name I am giving? I am giving it as marks valid exception. The name of the exception I am using. This is my customized exception, user defined exception. So I am using marks valid exception. So this throw is used to throw or raise an exception, right? Throw is the keyword. Now what I am telling, if marks is less than 0 or marks is greater than 100, you raise the exception. As I said, because it is user defined exception, it is mandatory that you need to throw the exception as well, right? Otherwise your system can't determine where is this particular exception and where you need to throw the exception, because it is user defined. So through new marks valid exception, and I'm writing some message here. I'm writing some message here, right? Now if I am entering the marks less than 0 or greater than 100, you are throwing the error. Now what you need to be, this is a try block. Now what it needs to be done, you need to catch that. You can give exception also, or I'll specifically write it as marks valid, and I am writing it as system dot out dot print ln caught exception e, right? Now you can see. Now I'll once again explain the flow. Read the value of your marks. Read the value of the marks. If the marks value is less than 0 or greater than 100, you are raising your own exception. So how you have written? I have written some exception, and this particular exception class also needs to be created. This particular exceptions class needs to be created. So it is marks valid exception, extends exception. It is mandatory that you need to extend the exception class. This is your user defined. Irrespective of that, it should extend the exception class. This message is to catch hold of the message here, marks not in the range. You need to print some message associated with that. So I am passing this, and I am so what does this mean? Throw new marks valid exception. So it directly reaches to the constructor. So I'm storing MSG. What is MSG here? This string, marks not in the range, right? And this MSG, that is the instance MSG, is equal to this MSG. I'm equalizing that and I'm returning the message. Now, what will happen? The first thing, I'm giving less than 0 or greater than 100, it throws an exception, right? You are having the constructor which is equalizing this message to the this particular message. Now, toString is a function. Now, where is this called? Where is this toString called? ToString is a function which is automatically called when you are trying to print an object. Where are you trying to print an object? E. E is an object here. Now I am trying to print this particular E. When I am trying to print this E, automatically your toString function is invoked. So what does it is doing? It is returning you the message. So that message is printed here. That message is itself printed here. Now once we will see the execution of the program. Okay. I'll give you some print statements, otherwise you won't understand. Print ln of enter marks. Marks is equal to an extent. If this is the case, you do this. Otherwise, what you can do? Okay. Okay, fine. I'll be running the program as. There was no print statement. I have added just the print statement here. Right now, you'll be getting enter marks. Now, you can write one simple print statement and you can print the marks or either. Now, purposefully, I'll be giving the marks in 200. 200 is not in the range. So, what should happen? Right? It should generate. When I am giving 200, it should automatically generate. I am creating my own exception. So, it should throw the error first and it should be handled also. So I am creating a trigger point to throw. I'm telling explicitly throw this exception when marks is greater than 100. Similar thing happens when your marks is less than 0 also. And I am writing my own complete exception here. See, similar to arithmetic exception where you got that exception and all. Similarly, now I am writing caught exception, marks not in the range. This is my marks not in the range. You can give some space here if you want to have a clear output. Right, 200 or some 300, say 300 I am giving. So what it is doing, right now, see, I'll explain this program. Marks is greater than 100, yes, this is throwing an error, throw new marks validation exception, the control transfers here, right? This message, what is this MSG? It is marks not in the range. So this MSG, marks not in the range, you are initializing to this MSG. That is the reason both are same, instance variable and your parameter is same. You have used your this dot MSG. Now where is your toString? What is the purpose of your toString here? toString is returning you the message here. So consider that. Now, where is your when is your toString invoked? I said you when you are trying to print your object. I'm trying to print E. What is E? It is an object of marks valid exception. Again, this is your whatever the class you have created. So now I'm trying to print E. Directly it invokes your toString. What is your toString doing? It is returning the message. So you will be writing the message. Marks not in the range is printed here. This is the E description here. If you write anything, suppose consider marks of the student is not in the range. Right now this will be the message. Save this. Accordingly it should print now. So run as Java application. Marks, we will give this time -1. -1 also is not in the range. It should still catch the exception. See, caught the exception. Now what is E? E is marks of the student not in the range. So whatever you are writing here will be stored as a part of your MSG. If you are not writing your toString or this process, it is just like you can catch the exception, but what is the description of that particular exception will be completely missed. That is the reason this is mandatory. But otherwise, there is no meaning in writing that, right? So marks of the student not in the range, store that in the MSG and return the MSG in toString. So you don't need to do anything. Whenever you are printing this as a part of your print trace, or you can directly system.out.println, whatever you do, whenever you are trying to print an object, your toString object is automatically called and it will return you the message what associated with this. This is the use of your throw, right? Like this, just like that. See, there is no purpose, but what I can do, I can even write a statement like throw new arithmetic exception also. Though it doesn't sound good, just I am telling this statement is still valid. So after throw statement, again you can't write any other things. So what you can do, close this properly. Right. See, I have just thrown the built-in exception also. Then is not this is not a problem. You can even throw a built-in exception. You can see there is no error here. Yeah, but this is not valid, right? Marks valid exception is now not valid. You give now properly arithmetic exception. Arithmetic exception E. Right now there is no error. So what is this? It is just say that is what use your throw properly to throw your user defined exceptions. Now this is not limited, so I can just write like just like that, throw new arithmetic exception of demo. I'm just associating some message here and I am going to throw this message. So it is like throw is a point where mandatorily I am throwing the error or exception. Right, just I'll be entering some marks now. Caught exception. Right now see here java.lang.arithmetic exception. There is no point, just I am to tell you the fact that your throw is not only limited to your user defined exceptions, you can even throw the built-in exceptions as well, right? Throw new arithmetic exception of demo. There is no point, I'm accepting s.nextint. I have given some value here. Irrespective of that, I am telling at this point you directly throw the arithmetic exception. So where does your control go? It directly goes to your catch block. It executes this and it is printing your E. What is your E? Associated with your arithmetic exception, and it will be giving you this particular result, caught exception and your E. E is the description about the arithmetic exception. So similarly, you can do anything. You can even remove this. There is no need of this one. If you don't want anything like demo to be printed, you can remove this also. If you write anything, it will be associated with your demo. And you don't need to write because it is already built in exception. You are not writing any other class. What is this marks valid exception? You are creating your own exception. That is the reason you need to define that particular class as well. And you need to tell that it is right, it is extending your exception class also. So this is the use of your throw keyword in Java.